Okay, so we can get started. All right. So good afternoon, everybody. We're going to be talking around what I call the group type metaverse, and basically those are non-philatelic items or philatelic items that are some sort of relationship with the group type stamps. Typically, they use a group type stamp for illustration. So this is everything that is around the group types, around the stamps, but not the stamps themselves. And so we will go through today's menu. So this is what I'm going to talk about. We looked at some postcards from our book, illustrated postcards, what we called chromos, or that were typically used in the second half of the 19th century for advertising purposes, but they were also quite collectibles. We'll look at some prepaid postcards from the 1931 Colonial Expo in Paris. And then we'll look at some stamps from former French colonies that reference the group type stamps when they were issued. So first one, you might have seen this one. There was a time where a couple of postcard editors, produced postcards that were illustrated with stamps from from different countries. So there are quite a few of those. This is one for the area of Djibouti Obok in the Horn of Africa, and so you can see that we have a 30 cent, 50 cents, 75 cents, and a 1 franc from Obok used for the illustration here. Stamps are, the reproduction is not that great, but you can still easily recognize the navigation and commerce allegoric figures. There was quite a few of those for some time. I have seen those cards on auction sites, with Delcamp, eBay, quite frequently, used or unused. I think that one was probably, I think there is a remnant of a cancel, so there might have been a stamp here and it was used postally. I don't know. But so that's the first example where graphics from the group type were used to illustrate some like really not philatelic material, but postcards here in that case. Moving on, we move into I know Easter was not that long ago, so we're going to talk a lot around chocolate for those. And so we had also multiple series of those chromos, those kind of collectible trading cards or advertising cards. This one from the Senez Stuurbel house in Brussels was a chocolate maker in Belgium. And so they have all of the series. This was a series around flags, coins, and stamps. I have not yet been able to identify the flag. Obviously, the top corner here is a French flag, but with a kind of yellow star on top of it, and then those like stripes of green and blue. I have not found what this is. I was looking for some old flags from Madagascar, but I have not been able to identify this one. The coin is obviously the Summers that was engraved by Oscar Rotti. It was used mostly in the Third Republic, but it was also the same design was reused starting 1960. So if you remember going to France before we switched to the euro, you might have seen 1 franc coins with that same design in the back. And then what's interesting is that to illustrate a collectible card around Madagascar, they put a badly printed stamp or reproduction of a 10 centime stamp from Sainte Marie de Madagascar. But on the back where they put the island, the big one, they didn't put actually where Sainte Marie might be, around this location here. So that is a little bit interesting that they use a stamp from that small island, colony that nobody wanted, as I think Ed would sometimes present it. but they didn't put that small island on the map at the back of the card. So interesting little card as well, from little map from Madagascar here. This was relatively a small piece. Okay, its size was like 65 millimeters, times 40. There is quite a few others that are much larger. We're going to go to one of those. So here we have another Belgian chocolate maker, Chocolat Antoine. At the back, obviously, their advertising. And in the front, you can see, so this one is a 37 card in the collection. I don't know how many were available. What's interesting here is that their series was about postmen, and they reference the French Guiana, but they use a stamp from French Guinea. So there was a little bit of an inconsistency. So you can, look at the game of find the error. And I was kind of asking myself, is this really, actually is the stamp right, but they miss, the mismatch is in the title or the legend, or is the legend correct, but they use the wrong stamp, not knowing any better. I think given the traditional dress of the person here, I would place this more in Guyana than in Guinea, but I might be wrong. I did some research online on traditional dress, and I think that's probably right, but to take with a grain of salt. But then that same card was fixed later, and then it became Facteur Guinée Française with still the stamp from Guinée Française. So maybe the dress was actually from Africa. Who knows? They fixed the problem later on without any further ado. So I'm going to assume that somebody, provided some feedback, send them a letter and say, hey, you had the wrong name of the colony. It doesn't match the stamp, so please fix. That was done. Still with those Chocolat Antoine, here we have one from the same series, the postman from Indochina, number 31, so it was actually probably anterior. Somebody kind of took inspiration of that same design here, with the postman on the horse that's riding, with a little mirador here. We have really, the roof with the flag. We'll find it here as well. It's just, different colors. It's like flipped. They added some, somebody on the side of the road, some farmer selling, I don't know, tomatoes or apples, some red fruits, I don't know. And this one is about the postal service in Indochina, and this is actually an Alfred Dubois 75 cents. And you can see the size, 100 millimeters times 70 for this one, and 140 times 90 for this one. So this one is a little bit bigger. The first one is what I call an actual chromos or a collectible. The second one is an actual postcard. So on the back, you have, room for the address and the correspondence that you can complete and mail this. This stamp is obviously not valid for postage. It's just a reproduction. Same here with the 10 centimes from Indochina. Since we see here, similar illustration, that theme continues as well across different brands. So I'm going to assume that there was probably one company that was printing those cards, and they made them on order for different, customers, because we have here that same, Chocolat Antoine from Brussels, this time number 65. This time is a factor from Tonquin in France, and they use a 1 centime from Tonquin, which never existed. So here as well, obviously the accuracy of their, reproductions was not really the main, worry that they had. They were just trying to make something that was probably, illustrative of typical postmen, in the Tonkin area, and put a stamp that will match, except that if that stamp didn't exist, that was not really a problem. That second card here is slightly smaller in size, and it is from a bakery in, I guess also in Ghent, so in Belgium, and you have basically, their advertising, which is like, eat more bread, but eat, more of the integral bread of Flanders, and you can find it in our, bakery. And then they have all of the addresses of the bakeries where that incredible bread is available. And as well with the badly reproduced 1 centime from Tonkin, which is a colony, part of Indochina that never got stamps with the legend Tonkin. Also, if one of you has seen one, please let me know. I'm I'm very interested to get at least a scan of it. But I think that those don't exist. Part of the series number 50, this one is Madagascar. You have the typical, postman with the white dress that was kind of, delivering the mail with that kind of what we call the Philanzan transport method with four people carrying the postman. I think our friend Luc Monterey from Colfrag, who is a specialist in Madagascar, is adamant that the mail was not delivered that way. It would have been way too expensive to have the four people carrying the European or French postman. So probably it's a little bit a mix and match of, there was a lot of postcards with that kind of transportation method, known to exist in Madagascar and other places in Africa. So they took that same illustration because it was really impacting for the public. They reused here a 1 centime stamp from Sainte Marie, the Madagascar, once again. So still, even if it's Madagascar, I very much doubt that there was this kind of mail delivery system on the island of Madagascar itself with maybe less than 50 Europeans on that small island. But who knows? And similar design reused this time for a postcard as well with group type 25 centime from Madagascar and dependencies. This one went through the mail. I think it was actually sent to Belgium, if I'm not wrong. And protocol Wien, it might have been something that was actually produced in Austria. Who knows? But so you find those. They're quite they're still quite collectible. They're not difficult to find. They're not very expensive either. They make for a very interesting kind of material that is related to the group type, but that is obviously full of inconsistencies and little issues with the 1 cent from Tonkin or the Guinea-Guyana kind of mishap. Now, moving along, we'll move to Paris, 1931, with a series of postcards, a limited series. There was 850 totals that were issued by the local association of porcelain tires, and they reused for the illustration a series of stamps that were typical of the French colonies at the time, including, of course, the group type here. But you have many others, the Panthère from Congo, you have the Kagou in New Caledonia, Alphée du Bois, etc., etc. So there is the design is pretty kind of like primitive art in a way, and very colorful, orange and blue mixed. They had those cards for 12 different colonies: French West Africa, Algeria, French Somali coast, the French establishment in Oceania, French India, Indochina, Guyana, Madagascar, Morocco, Martinique, New Caledonia, and Togo, Cameroon. And so obviously not all of those had group type stamps. So five of those colonies are illustrated with their postcard with a stamp from the group type. So the first two that we have here, Madagascar. So we have the 1 centime from Madagascar Independence here in that corner. Pretty interesting postcard as well. Different views. And the one from Oceania with here the 1 centime at the top of the typical, dwellings, some statues, and other kind of views from this part of the Pacific Ocean. Nothing really, not much to say here. The one from French India, so here with some temple and elephants, and the one from Guyana, the stamp is here, not to be confused with the one from the Alpha du Bois here. They don't not always show very nicely as they are reprinted, but it's that mix of blue and orange colors. It's quite impacting visually, and I also like the font that was used for those for the labeling. So pretty nice series of postcards. And then for the last one, so the Western French Africa, we didn't really have its group type, but countries that were regrouped under the Western French Africa at some time, like the French Sudan here, had their group type stamp. So they could have used Senegal or Sudan, or they used the Sudan for this one for the group type. They use the palmier from Senegal. You have Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, and this one is AOF. So pretty interesting. And this is the back of the card. So they were actually prepaid, 15 centimes, the rate at the time for France. And they were issued by the Association des collectionneurs d'entiers postaux, so the association of, collectors of postal tires in Paris. So you have a nice series. So 5 of them with group type stamps. So they complement any kind of collection around group type quite nicely. Moving along, we're gonna go with in the category of stamps on stamps, and we'll start with Côte d'Ivoire. So I'm going to say Côte d'Ivoire. I will try not to say Ivory Coast, because Côte d'Ivoire has asked that the name in English be kept as Côte d'Ivoire. So we'll use that. So this is a luxury kind of, proof that is signed by the engraver, by the artist, Jean Fulpin. Here is a picture of the artist and his signature, so we can confirm it's pretty much the same. You have the dry kind of stamp from the Ministère des Colonies, I think, something like that, or the control imprimerie de timbre poste. Yeah, control here. Yeah. And that was basically the sample of a 40 franc stamps for the Journée du Timbre in 1973, if I'm not wrong. Fulpin designed an incredible amount of stamps for France, of course, but also the colonies. So you're going to find some of those designs across multiple places of the world. Beautiful work. He died with probably 32 years ago, in October 1991, if I'm not wrong. So it's he worked for many years in this business. Great artist. So I was able to find online a lot of material on around those stamps and proofs and different like trials. So here we have some non-perforated color proofs or essays. I'm going to say that of all of the different, reuse of a group type stamp, this is the best engraving I have seen, or the best reproduction, with one major difference, which is on the perforations, because we all well know that kind of little, tooth right there is incorrect. The perforation were typically, the hole in the corner, not a peak. So that probably is the one small critique I might make on those, but you can see different colors, gray, greenish, black, green, and red, or orange, all orange. So different ways that those were tried. This is the date where those proofs were made. So we're looking at the end of August in 1973. This one is a little bloc feuillet or sheetlet, souvenir sheet if you want, from the actual design of the final stamp. So it's red letters, green background, and the 1 cent color is correct, in a dark black. And you have the little label of the Imprimerie de Timbre Poste at the bottom here, France. So pretty interesting item as well. Of course, we had first day covers. I love those because you have the reproduction of the stamp, you have the stamp with the group type reproduction on top, and then the two cancels with the reproduction of the group type stamp as well. So on one item, you have 4 reproduction of the group type stamps, which is quite amazing. They run 2 series, one with 1,000 pieces, Series A, and Series B is 2,000 pieces from 1,001 to 3,000. They're pretty much the same, except for, the numbering in red here and in black here. Also, and you can see that we had all the proofs before from the end of August 73, and the first day of issue was the 9th of October 1973 in Abidjan. So pretty interesting piece as well. I know I love those items. Still in Côte d'Ivoire seems to have a very, I don't know if they have a good memory of the 1892, 1893 kind of time frame with the French. But they had also, a few years later, they celebrated the centenary of the postage stamp of Côte d'Ivoire with their Journée du Timbre, and this time they have reused a 4 cent from the group type with that nice, strip of 2 stamps plus the little, selvage with some comments. So this is all CIP or CIP is the Société Ivoirienne de la Poste et de l'Épargne. So it's like the savings and loan and post services, society of Côte d'Ivoire. So this one, was issued in August 92. That's another example of a use of a group type. Different other stamps from prior years as well, used for illustration. You have the little village of Assini here. There, I don't know this one. Celebrating the 1st anniversary of their independence, and then one with stamp that was commemorating the same CIPE organization here. So Côte d'Ivoire is not the only former colony that has always reused those stamps. There is also the République fédérale islamique des Comores, or the Comoros Islamic Federal Republic, with a very nice souvenir sheet here. So we have that. This one is perforated. Another one exists that is not perforated. Those are airmail stamps for 500 francs in the Comores, with representation of 4 of the stamps that were used in those islands: Mayotte, Moëlie, Anjouan, and Grande Comore, all 1 centime. They're really original, and of course, you will all know that Sir Rowland Hill was, at the beginning of the usage of stamps in the world, with, I think, that 1 penny black here that we all, even if we don't collect in British stamps, Mick might probably tell us a lot about this, but it's historically significant for philatelists. So that is the last I have seen between chromos, postcards, stamps on stamps, using group type stamps. If you know of other examples, as usual, please let me know. I'm always looking for additional information. And before we conclude this short talk, I will have still also in that same category, I need to show you this, okay? Because those are very, very special kind of proofs or not even proofs, early prints of group type stamps during the engraving process or you know, the work of Mouchon, you know, engraving those stamps. So you will notice there is some differences, okay, between those two views. I magnify the one on the left, but the size are the same, okay? They're scale 2, so they're twice the size of the actual stamp, okay? So this one is an essay that is 34 times 42 millimeters, okay? And you can notice some differences with this one. So with this one here, mostly around the frame. This one has multiple lines. This one is like an empty frame here. And you can also notice that the background of the, you know, is like dark, you know, but like a flat, dark color. While here we can neatly, you know, very easily and clearly see the little white dots that were added. So clearly the printer might have found that, you know, the rendering of the dark background here was not nice enough. You can see little white dots. It was definitely hard to print, you know, large space of color in a very uniform manner. So adding the dots fix that problem. It might also have been that, hey, if you wanted to put all of this area here, you know, here in black or blue or red or whatever the color was, you would have used a lot of ink. So maybe to reduce cost, having some white dots that were obviously not using any ink was helping. But so you have those two pieces that predate the apparition of the group type stamp, because from those kind of models, probably you know, somebody working with Mouchon, one of his apprentices might have started to reproduce the smaller design on a scale of 1, you know, on steel probably or copper. So you have all of that process, and those are probably unique pieces. I was able to acquire this one. This one, to my knowledge, is in the collection of another well-known philatelist who specializes in Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon. It was exhibited not so long ago as part of his some of his group type Saint-Pierre-et-Miquelon collection by Mr. Tillard. Very, very nice piece as well. So it's amazing that they have survived, but they're beautiful for anybody who has a passion for the group type stamps. And I think that's it for this chat. Yeah. So what I can propose, I have been doing some research on combination letters, also involving the group type, and of course also involving you know, French colonies. And so if you want, I can move into that. I think we have time, right, Ken?
Yes, we certainly do.
All right. So, and this one is a little bit of a work in progress. So if you have any feedback, if you have any comments, please do not hesitate to share. I will tell you basically why I'm sharing this now with you. So I'm looking at combination letters and trying to get more information about what appeared to be a special border rate that was in place between the city of Langzhou in Guangxi and Indochina or Tonkin. I'm not totally sure yet. So bear with me. I will explain what I mean with that. Few historical pointers or reminder, or I mean, that's an area that I'm not that familiar with, so I had to do a lot of research myself to educate myself on the topic. And if you think that things are complicated today between America and China, they were not much simpler 150 or 200 years ago. So you can read all of this, but basically through a series of treaties between Chinese government at the time and initially the British government, but also other Western government like the French or the German or even the US, there were multiple treaty ports that were open in China over time that could basically participate in international trade. Before then, only the port of Canton or Guangzhou was authorized to basically, export stuff to Europe or America. Initially, most of those cities were actual ports, on water. Then they were river ports, and then they were even border towns that could deal with the countries on the other side of the border. Okay, and there was also a treaty where it was decided that the Chinese will no longer collect the tax, but that would be left to the European who had a special status in those treaty ports. And that led to the creation of something that was called the Chinese Maritime Customs Services, where most of the staff was European, at least, on the management level. And those guys didn't just didn't take care of collecting taxes. They also started doing a lot of additional administrative duties, which included, at some point, managing the delivery of mail. So they became what is called as a customs post. Okay, and I have put here, 2 councils that are typical of that time. Of course, you will find them with pretty much any of those cities that had, that had a treaty port status. Those 2 here, Semao and Mengzu, obviously are not ports because they're in Yunnan, way inside the country. Okay, and 2 additional points here is that the customs post system was kind of replaced at the end of 1896 by the Chinese imperial post system in the Qing era, but few custom post offices remain in operations until at least 1901. So you can see here 1898, 1899. So obviously the fact that the Chinese system and the custom post was combined with other local post system and to form the Chinese imperial post system in 1896 didn't completely stop the usage of some of their old councils and things like that. And one thing that's very helpful for us is that in the late 19th century, the authorities locally worked on the Romanization of the postal system. So that explains why we typically have maybe not those councils, because mostly the customs post was managed by Europeans, but you will see later on bilingual council with, city in Chinese and the corresponding name in Roman characters. Very complex. I'm learning a lot as I dig into this. Meanwhile, on the French side, at the border between China and Indochina, so there were 3 main points of exchanges for the mail between southern China and Tonkin. The area of Mongce in Yunnan, where the mail transited via Oko, and then the border town on the other side was Laoke in Indochina. There was a little bit further east, Langzhou in Guangxi, where the border town on the other side was Langsan. And then we had still further east, and this time, straight on the water, the city of Pacoy, with the spelling, let's say Chinese spelling a little bit, and then the French early spelling to differentiate the two, where basically actually the mail will get on the weekly maritime service from Hong Kong to Haiphong, and then the mail will get passed to Indochina via Haiphong. To be noted as well that we'll see this eventually in the presentation down the road, that mail from Yunnan that was sent to northern China was a difficult route by land, and so oftentimes they will actually transit via Tonkin, meaning that they would have to pay an international, postage rate. And let's also remember that at the time there were not any kind of postal relations between China and France at the time. There was no bilateral relations. China was not a member of the UPU yet. So the sender they had two ways of franking their mail. They could pay the domestic postage for a first weight letter that was 2 cents at the time. So put a Chinese, Chinese Imperial Post, stamp on the envelope, and they could put next to it the Indo-Chinese stamps that were necessary to cover the postage, within Indochina or from Indochina to a foreign destination. Obviously, that would be a little bit more expensive. You'd pay, the domestic rate from China, within China, and then you pay the prevalent rate, within Indochina. Or they could pay the foreign rate using Chinese stamps. And then once the mail reached the border, the Chinese postal agent locally would affix the corresponding Indo-Chinese stamp before handing over the mail to their Indo-Chinese counterpart. So they had those two ways. And if the domestic postage was paid in cash, you would find some kind of marking like this on the letter, or you would just have the large dollar chop from the city where the mail was given to indicate that, hey, yes, it's valid. The postage is paid to the border. And then the Indo-Chinese stamp that were affixed on those letters will be cancelled, once passing through the Indo-Chinese, mail system at the first, border town. So of course you remember as well that in a decree of December 26, 1898, changed the French postal rates, going down from 25 centimes to 15 centimes. That was valid for, domestic mail in France and for the intra-colonial service. We suspect that new rate that was applied in early 1899 might have caused the introduction of a reduced border rate in Langzhou. And I say we suspect because I have found one letter that appears to use that reduced border rate that predates that decree of December 1898. We'll see that one in a minute. Effective January 1st, 1902, there was finally bilateral relationship between France and China for the mail. But apparently the city of Langzhou, it was a little bit of some different on its status, and it was specifically excluded from this treaty. So other border towns might have finally seen the Chinese stamp being recognized in Indochina, but for Langzhou, or Longqiu in French, that was not the case. Remember also that starting 1900, 1901, 1902, 1903, the French was having those few, kind of post office that were managed by Indochina in southern China. You're familiar with, all of the overprints from Mengzhou, from Paco, from Hoihao, from Yunnan, etc., or Canton. And then finally, in 1914, so China joined the Postal Union, which put an end to all of this problem of double franking that were quite complicated. So let's get started. I put here a map to give you a little bit more to place the areas that I'm talking about. So it's really the mail between Langzhou here and Langsong in Indochina on Tonkin. This here is the border between China and Indochina. Of course, you have the Gulf of Tonkin here. So you can see some other, places that we have mentioned already, Pacoy. You can see here Semao. Here we have Mengce. So the city of Oko is right here. So on the other side, here is Laoke. Up north, you have Yunanfu. So a lot of places. I think there was Nanning, yes, Nanning here as well. So different places where mail was sent there. There was a lot of transit from this part of, from Guangxi to Indochina. A lot of trade, a lot of exchanges. So obviously mail was a big part of these exchanges. Tom, question? Okay. So first cover, which is the one that led me to question that the hypothesis that the change, the special rate, which we say is 6 cents instead of 10. 10 cents was the normal rate for foreign destination. So obviously, any kind of mail that will go from China to Indochina would have to pay 10 cents. All right. The registration rate was also 10 cents. So what we know is that the authorities at some point in 1898 or 1899, as they were concerned that they were going to lose most of the mail from Langzhou to Indochina, they granted to the city of Langzhou a reduced rate of 6 cents for mail going from China to Indochina. That rate was only valid in Langzhou. It was not valid in Mengce or Semao or Oko or any other place. And that is probably the earliest cover I have seen with, that is franked 16 cents. Okay, and it uses those stamps from the Chinese Imperial Chinese Post. So those are the dragon, the coal dragon from 1897, the dragon type from 1897. You can see here the big dollar chop, large dollar chop from Langzhou with the date of 7th of August, 98. On the back, there is an arrival cancel to Haiphong on the 12th of August. And then on the front here, you see the Indochinese stamp, with, 40 centimes, canceled in Langsong on the 10th of August. So I'm struggling to really explain the rate on this one. The explanation that was provided on the Ocean catalog from Interasia says this is a 16 cents registered triple rate. Okay, so the fee for registration was 10 cents, and the mail matter from Langzhou was treated as internal mail, domestic mail. So it paid domestic rate, so 2 cents per half ounce, so triple weight, 6 cents. Okay. At the exchange rate that was in place at the time, so of 1 cent to 2.5 centimes, so 6, cents would have made the 15 centime rates that would have been prevailing, I think, in Indochina for local mail. at least within Tonkin. And so, but I can't really explain how a 40 centime here would pay for registration of for 25 centime and then a triple weight later, which would have been 45. So for me, the weight this is a first weight letter that pays 6 cents in postage and 10 cents, on the Chinese side in registration. So it does pay the reduced rate, reduced foreign rate from 10 to 6 cents. If there are any experts in this area, I welcome your comments. I'm working with some of my colleagues from Colfra to get a little bit more, and I think there is a Chinese philatelic kind of society as well in the US or in the UK that I will reach out for to get a little bit more explanations. But so this is the first one, registered letter. I think the 15 centime plus 25 centime on the Indo-Chinese side is okay. The 6 cents plus 10 cents on the Chinese side is only valid if we accept that there was a 6 cents rate from Lengzhou to Indochina at the time, and that might have been the case. So I have quite a few more of those. So this one here then complicates things because this one pays, obviously, it's also a registered letter from Lengzhou. Okay, it's very visible here in December 98 to Saigon. So it goes to Indochina. It is 4 months, later than the one we just talked about. But this one, it pays 20 cents total, 10 plus 4 plus 2 plus 4 times 1. So then it pays 10 cents for registration and it pays 10 cents for postage. So what is the explanation? And it pays obviously 50 cents here. So it might be that the postal, employee from the Chinese post in Lengzhou use the prevailing exchange rate of 1 cent equal 2.5 centime and say, okay, I have 20 cents. I put a 50 cent stamp and I send it through. But then why having a 10 cent rate for postage to Indochina, while in the prior card, we have only a 6 cent rate for postage? So that's where I'm a little bit, struggling to explain all of those kind of rankings. So it might have been that things were not yet well known by all of the different senders. This was just being rolled out, but still over a 4 months period, people would have probably heard that, hey, the rate to Indochina is 6 cents, no longer 10 cents. Or it might have been just a mistake from the sender, who knows? Because this one here with this, simple letter, first weight letter in 1901, 6 cents in Lengzhou with, again, here those new kind of bilingual cancels, and then 15 cents in Indochina. So there is no question, no problem there. 6 cents for the local rate, border rate, instead of 10 cents for a foreign destination, and then 15 cents for the mail within China going to Hanoi. This is all good from my perspective. I have no problem with that. Moving along, I'm going to start here with a full series of letters to the same recipient, Mr. Mao Fat in Haiphong. So that was, this person do exist. We find references about, Mao Font as a Chinese, trader in Haiphong. It was established already in 1892. There are some reference about this person in 1898. We also find him as a representative of a maritime insurance company, Manwan, that is having some trouble with the Messagerie Maritime. So we know that person did exist and was established in Haiphong for a relatively long period of time. So we have this simple letter again with the 6 cents from Langzhou and then 15 centimes for Indochina. No problem there. The number 142 is probably the PO box in Haiphong. That's not a registered letter, still a beautiful cover. So I'll let you decide. And I added the prices that those covers go for on the market. I think the prior one, no, I don't recall. Maybe this one. Oh yeah, this one was sold for like $10,000 back in 2014. So definitely a valuable cover. It might be for the dollar shop here, the big data from Langzhou. I don't know, but those are pricey. Here we have another one, which is this time registered, and actually what we call double register or register with receipt. So you have the Chinese mark R and R, double time, struck twice, and then you have the French hand stamps registered, recommandé, registered, and then accusé de réception AR in a frame. And you have here again, so you have, I think, 20 cents here plus 1, 2, well, that's 22, 24, 26. So 26 cents for this one. So you have basically 6 cents for postage and 20 cents for the double registration. I will assume that the postal agent in China at the border fixed the 40 centime from Indochina, which was 15 cents plus 25 for registration. There is no extra 10 centime here for the advice of receipt. It might have been put on a separate document according to the French regulations, or just not exist at all. I don't know. Also something that I need to research. And I am going to assume as well that the 962 was the number for the registration in China, and that eventually the address was added because everything is written in like purple ink. The number here is struck, and then you have the address. Maybe the postal agent at the border would write the address in French, basically, so it could be used by the Indo-Chinese Postal Service, while the Chinese would have been meaningless for a French agent. Of course, for local population that was involved in the mail, most likely they would have been able to write and understand Chinese if they were educated enough. So that's how something to be taken into account. Another interesting letter. We have very similar one, another one here, where again you have the registration number have been struck and rewritten. So I guess the registration number is changed to go from the Chinese system to the Indo-Chinese system when the letter crosses the border. This one used to be in Ed's collection. It has 13 2 cent stamps, so 26 cents, same explanation, 6 cents for postage, 10 cents for the double registration, and then only 40 centimes on the French or Indo-Chinese side. And it went for a pretty penny back in November 2019. Another very similar letter, 16 cents on the Chinese side, 40 cents in the Indo-Chinese one. Not much question. Same process. The registration numbers are struck, and a new one is written as the letter passes the border. This one in 1902. All of those go into today in the $1,000 range, a little bit more eventually. This one I found in a book about the Yunnan territory from a French association on Chinese philately. This is a double weight letter registered. So you have actually the handwritten R symbol here. You have the hand stamp R from China. I have not been able to find the R, in a frame, in a box from the French, but this is registered 960 and 206. I guess those numbers seem to increment almost not in parallel, but obviously there will be different, registered mail in Indochina as well, sent locally in Longson, so the numbers will not go up, increment at the same rate. But the previous one, I go back, this one was 904 and 122, and here we have 960 and 206. Okay. So 56 letter registered on the Chinese side, and 84 in Longson on the same period. That might seem a little bit acceptable or something that you might expect. And so 55 centimes on the in the Chinese side for twice 15 centimes for postage, and then 25 centimes for registration. Nothing really too weird here. This one is an example of that mail from China to China, paying international rate because it traveled via Tonkin. So we have 10 cents for registration, and we have an additional 20 cents for a double weight or second weight letter international postage. So 30 cents total from the Chinese post, and then in Longson the postal agent added 75 centimes from Indochina, and then the letter traveled from Langzhou on January 3rd to Longson on the 5th of January, to Haiphong on the 7th. There it took a boat, went to Shanghai, where it arrived on the 17th. Beautiful cover. It was much more expensive, obviously, than paying what would have been a 12 cents, 2 cents domestic plus 10 cents registration rate in China. But of course, here we are talking of a, 2-week travel versus probably, 5-6 weeks by road and mountain and rivers in China. So definitely a choice for the sender. Do I pay a little bit more but go much faster? And that's what we have here. So last cover here. This one is also a little bit challenging for me. 1904. It's obviously way after the postal relations between France and China were in place. That was in 1902. But as I said earlier, the city of Langzhou was excluded from that arrangement or that treaty. So that explains why all those letters in 1902 in July still paid, still had to put the double franking. They had to put the Indochinese stamps on the mail. They could not just send the mail to Indochina or France with only Chinese postage, as though that would have been valid from Mongce or Pakoi or Shanghai, for example, but not from Langzhou. And so this one here would be eventually an indication that by May of 1904, finally the same bilateral treaty applied to the mail from Langzhou to Indochina. This one goes to Tonkin, to Hanoi, and it pays 6 cents. And it also would let us to believe that, well, the reduced, 6 cents postage was still valid, because otherwise the letter would have paid, 10 cents.
Are you ready?
For foreign.
Okay.
So it's It's still an open question. I'm trying to figure that one out as well. When was the possible, reduced rate of 6 cents? When was it first applied and why? Was it tied to the introduction of the reduced rate in between, the French, intracolonial system in early 99, and then up to what date was that, 6 cents rate in place in Langzhou? We have mail that can help us. Obviously, this one I kind of added here, in a dotted line, what would have been for me the size of the envelope. This one was definitely, cut open a little bit roughly. If I try looking at the prior envelopes I have of the same type, what would have been the size of this one? There is a good chunk missing. There might have been enough space here to put a stamp from Indochina. I don't know. So more questions with those stamps. I tried to put here a little bit of a table that explains all the different rates. So you can see that where normally the rate sending letter to Indochina would have been 10 cents, because that would have been like France or any other foreign country. And the rate letters to China via Tonkin would have been 10 cents as well, because the international rate was applied. But for Langzhou, we have 6 cents at some point in time. And on the French side, so obviously before 1999, rate would have been 25 centimes for a first weight letter, but there might have been a lower rate that was in place. There was a decree in 1888 where at least the rate within Cochinchina and its dependencies was 15 cents. So that might have been the normal rate there. So there is a lot of different rates that apply depending on when the mail was sent and what the origin and the destination would have been, which makes for a quite complicated kind of thing. There was also, to make things even more complicated, in a short period in early 1898, the exchange rate between the Chinese, or the French franc and the piastre, because all of the stamps were sold in piastres in China, even though the value, the facial was in centime and franc, and the rate was of basically 1 cent of piastre for 5 centimes. But in early 1898, that rate went up, and you needed like 6 cents of piastre for a 15 centime stamp. For a 15 centime stamp. So it was like twice as expensive. So that makes things quite complicated. And I have seen a couple of letters with that. At that time, that were stamps in China with only 7.5 cents instead of the 10 cents that would have been required, probably to account for that increase or that like change in exchange rate. So they had a differential applied, and they only stamped their mail at 7.5 cents instead of 10 cents, with letter to France or other foreign countries, which makes for another layer of complications. So still about Langzhou. I mean, I cannot talk about Langzhou and Langzhou without sharing this with you. So the French wanted to open an office in Langzhou. The Chinese didn't really want to let them open an office in Langzhou. So the office was announced officially open in June, but it actually never opened because the French postal agent that was supposed to work there died. Okay, he apparently had an accident and he passed away. So there was no personnel to open the office. There were supposed to have been stamps from Indochina with an overprint Longcheu. I'm showing you here two that are probably fantasies or fakes, that were that were made by somebody trying to create some very, very elusive stamps. Because according to the authorities and the general manager of the postal service in Indochina, all the stamps that were prepared with a Longcheu overprint were burned, so they were destroyed. And the office that was allegedly about to open in June was definitely abandoned in I think November, or a few months later. So that was the office that could have been, but that basically never existed. But the French still had a beautiful consulate in Longcheu. There was a lot of traffic, a lot of transit. So I think there is no mail. Even the Longcheu Council is not real if it exists on mail from that era. Those are fake letters. So nothing much about those. Bibliography, what I have looked at and where I found some information. Auction catalogs, obviously, for the actual letters. I will take the descriptions from the sellers or the auction house with a grain of salt, because they are sometimes maybe not mutually exclusive, but they conflict and they don't agree on their explanation, especially when they try to explain the postal rates. But there have been quite a few of those, like combination covers or double franking covers for sale by Ava Auctions, by Spink, by Interasia, which I believe no longer exist. This is the book I mentioned that also give a totally different explanation of the tariffs, with 10 cents for the first, let's say when there was a 26 cents rate, 10 cents for the first weight of half an ounce, and then 6 cents for the second rate, and then 10 cents for registration. That doesn't really align with anything I found elsewhere, or other letters that were like, second weight or simple weight, but not registered. So it's very, very hard to explain those tariffs. There is a lot of hypotheses. I would love to find one good explanation, one good justification that is, documented with the actual decrees, most likely in Chinese, but we can also translate those. So there is some mail, also some articles in the FCP or the Cultural Bulletin, and of course there is the Orsery from the Rousseau around the post and mail, French mail in the Far East. Beautiful, a lot of literature. I strongly encourage you to look at what you might have and share any kind of your findings. And to conclude that second little chat, I have to mention this letter, not double franking really. So I could probably assume that the presence of this customs semi cancelled meant that if it was needed, the domestic rate was paid in cash, and the letter was then sent from Semao to Mengzhou. Okay, it's like 10 days trip, and then from there it was passed across the border to Laoke, where the 25 cent was applied, or it might have been applied initially by the sender. Beautiful cover, and it went for what I find is an amazing price for a French colony cover, because it sold for over $40,000, and when you had the 20% auctioneer fee, that means almost 50,000 just last month. That letter came from the collection of Steve Chazen, the Oxy CEO, who had a I understand, an amazing collection of Indochina. It is said to be one of the 5 letters that are known to have that customs, Semao cancel. I have found a second one in that book about that. In that book, a second one is illustrated. So they're probably quite rare, but beautiful mail. Piece of Marcophily or kind of mail from the French colonies for an amazing price. So I'm not the buyer of that one. And that's it.
Well, thank you, Loïc. As it turns out, I think that part of the presentation was longer than the first part. We could have made 2 out of this.
Yeah, well, yeah, it took you for a little bit more than an hour, I hope.
But very interesting. And I don't know if, even after listening to you, if Lungchow is a treaty port, but Sam Chu, the president of the Royal in Canada, is an exhibitor of treaty port mail.
Okay.
So he might be able to help you with some of that too.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm working with Jean-Luc, one of the French Colfra members who specialize in Asian mail and China, Indochina kind of relationship. So we'll probably put an article together. I might do an English version of it. So maybe that will end up in the FCP.
Good. Does anybody have questions or comments for Loïc today?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. First one, Loïc, I thought of it while you were speaking. If you have any questions about AR stuff, get in touch with David Handelman at the University of Ottawa.
Okay.
I can give you his email address. He has spent his lifetime collecting AR markings.
Okay.
And I think he bid on my Indochina cover. I know he was bidding on it when it sold at Spink. And David has a lot of material on the web. So that may be of help, may not be of help. I don't know what's there. I don't remember. The other comment I had relative, I didn't know about the commentary of the postman in Madagascar as to whether how real this was, the fellow being born by 5 natives. I actually had a Madagascar postcard with a 5 centime group type franking, and the picture side was downtown Tananarive, and there was the postman with the 4 guys carrying him in the street. So I always thought he was real.
Yeah, that might be. Yeah. I have heard both. I mean, some people say, yeah, no, that looks like totally possible. And some people say, no, that never happened.
Well, I saw the picture.
Okay, they have proof.
I don't think I have it, though. So
no, that's okay. No, I have. Well, you can find a lot of, pictures with that kind of transport with the four bearers and the European, quietly seated. It probably will be totally, politically incorrect today, but back then it was a typical method of transportation. So I guess, yeah, they do exist on postcards, so with a picture as proof, not just in drawings.
Anybody else? Remember to unmute if you want to say something to the group.
Yeah. So Ken, I'll print those as PDFs and I'll send them for you, so you can put them on the website.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I am going to turn off the recording.